Welcome to Undo, the podcast where we rethink work, rest and play. I'm Dulcie.
And I'm Yemisi. Hi!
And we're here to have the conversations that don't happen enough about ambition, identity, rest, joy and doing life on your terms. So if you are done with shrinking, settling or running on fumes, you're in the right place. Today we're going to be talking about boundaries. But it's not about just saying no. We're exploring boundaries as a strategy and a way to protect your energy, your time, and your joy. All right, boundaries, the B word, boundaries. Oh, God, I already can feel what it's bringing up. The way we've just inhaled.
And breathe.
It's such an important topic, though, boundaries, my God,
Yes.
because there is this sort of overriding belief, and again, we can say this as women, as Black women, as Nigerian women, like boundaries. I think for a lot of people, especially women of colour, you've been taught that boundaries are rude, and that part of being a good person or a good child is your availability and your pliability and your amiability, all those things, right? Which precludes the word no. And so it's always that thing about, if you, a boundaried person is rude or selfish or, you know, this whole thing about you should be nice. It's a big one. Listen, I'm going to throw it to you.
See. Let's take it back to some science stuff, yeah? I see boundaries as a litmus test of givers and takers. When a taker hears the word boundaries, they are upset by that word. The word boundaries get their hackles up. They hate that word so much. And they're the first to associate negative connotations to boundaries. When you say boundaries to a giver, it's like a balm, a salve, a salvation. It's like, oh yes, I need some, please. And so when you say that word boundaries, when you hear the word boundaries, check your reaction. If you feel negative, then you start to have your hackles up and you start to feel defensive, that's a sign. Because as someone who, like you said, who has been very terrible at setting boundaries in the past, when I started setting boundaries, my life changed for the better in every way, shape or form. But what I noticed was that people who had taken advantage of those boundaries in the past did not like them. And that's when you start getting the emotional blackmail. That's when you start getting the thing about the selfishness or the respecting. And so, yeah, boundaries is a litmus test. And forget about what society has turned it into or made it seem like. Everybody has their own individual understanding of how they would feel if they and those around them set healthy boundaries. And a boundary is not a barrier. It's not saying that, I hate you or I can't stand you, or it's a way of preserving a healthy state of being so that you can continue to be there for the people that you love as well as yourself, right? So not to the detriment of yourself. So I actually drew a really cool visual about this actually. So imagine a tomato plant, right? It's out in the sun all day, regardless of how hot it is outside. And you can see it's wilting, it's withering. There's like one solitary tomato left and it's just about to fall off the vine. And then contrast that with a tomato vine that it's in a greenhouse, it's thriving. It's still exposed to the sun, but the greenhouse creates this kind of protection that you can still bear. You see it's flourishing, it's bearing fruit, and whoever wants to come and get fruit can get they can get the tomato, and they get more tomato because the tomato is being nurtured in an environment that is not exposed to the elements. And so that's the way I see boundaries. It's a way of ensuring that you are able to thrive and be of even more help and more support to those around you by first catering to your own needs.
Wowee, that's a fantastic analogy. Yeah, it's
Thank you, Tyler.
gorgeous. Very good. And you know what's so nice is when you're talking to someone about something and they've already done that work. You know, when you're talking to a healed person, it's just like, hard-earned words.
See, I went to the fire for it and I'm not going back.
Come out gold.
We started from the bottom.
And we're here. But yeah, I think that's a phenomenal way of looking at it. And I want to go back to something you said earlier on about the litmus test. I think that is such an interesting thing around reactions to boundaries. And I think with people, the give and take thing, I think with givers, there's probably two buckets of reaction. I think there are the ones who are like, oh my God, yes, please give me boundaries. And there's probably the earlier stage, which is how am I going to do about? How am I going to set up a boundary? Oh my God, you know, there's a fear and a resistance because it's like, what will people think of me? And how do I practically actually do that? Because I think there's a lot of talk about boundaries, as in the need for boundaries, the importance of boundaries, the outcomes, the positive outcomes of establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries. But there's not nearly enough on how do you, especially if you are someone who is more of a giver and you haven't had strong boundaries in the past, how do you practically day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute maintain boundaries?
I love that you mentioned that, Dulcie, because that was a challenge I had when I first started to try to establish boundaries. I was like, how?
How the hell am I supposed to do
this? And you're right, there's a prerequisite here, and that is, you know, there's self-awareness, first of all, so giver versus take and all that stuff. But there's also the element of doing the work of asking yourself why you care so much about what people think about you. And let me even say you, not say you, me. I had to do some work and figure out the root cause of my people pleasing. And that was what it was. It was a desire to be, you know, or rather a compulsion sometimes to be a people pleaser. And you know, it's like what is it? Is that you get a dopamine hit, like when you help someone, especially, you see, the worst part is when they appreciate it, right? For the ones that don't appreciate it, it's easy to set boundaries with those ones. But the ones that actually do appreciate it and even want more of you, and you know, those are the ones that's really difficult. And you have to, you know, just as you break up with the dopamine addiction from social media, there is a certain level of addiction that you have to break here too. It's not just, it's not just like, it's very addicting, especially if you're someone that's an introvert, for example, or you don't have a lot of friends, or, you know, you're not someone that is super sociable, or you have social anxiety. So there's some people I think that
next
are more.
Just say my name, yeah.
I was actually thinking of myself, but hey. That's why we're friends.
Yeah.
Like, you find that one friend and you're like, yeah, I'm never letting you go. You know that?
You ain't go nowhere.
Yeah. So it's like that, you know. So when you have that, you know, kind of a very small sphere, I tended to be more susceptible to. So I don't have a lot of friends. So the ones that I do have, I need to exactly. So that kind of scarcity mindset as well is built into it. There's a lot of things, sis.
A lot.
It's a lot
deep.
It's deep.
Like we're probably going to say this every week, but, you know, we are not qualified psychotherapists. Last season, we did talk to one. If you want to reach out to someone who can help you with your mental health and mental well-being stuff, then go and listen to the final episode of season 1. We're just going to tell you what our situations are.
Exactly. and a lot of this came out of therapy, FYI.
There we go.
So yeah, I have been doing a lot of therapy. And so that was where the bulk of the work kind of really started from. So because there's underlying issues, sometimes childhood trauma, like there's so many things that could potentially be root causes that I think, you know, it's good you mentioned therapy, because I really would highly recommend, if you're someone who really struggles with setting boundaries, there's probably some root cause that maybe you're not seeing, or maybe you're not allowing, subconsciously not allowing yourself to see. Speak to a professional.
Definitely.
To help you unblock that. It worked. It definitely worked for me.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Speak to a specialist, because this stuff goes really, really deep. We've already said there are so many reasons why people might struggle with boundary setting, and that it's certainly not, what I'm about to talk about, it might not apply to you, but it's just something I think is quite common. But the challenge around this whole not having boundaries is that if you are stuck in a place of always saying yes, there's going to be, even if you feel like, oh, I like to help people, I like to do this. I mean, I would challenge you on all that, but even if that's you, I can promise you eventually you are going to burn out. You are going to resent the hell out of other people, especially people that have boundaries.
Oh my God.
That, like, if you are not a boundaried person and you are dealing with someone who is, that hatred is born out of jealousy.
So I'm just going to slight interjection here.
Yeah.
That was me with my husband. My husband has a fantastic boundary setting. And for a while, I hated his guts. Because I was miserable and I wanted him to be as miserable as I was. Because I did not understand how he got to get away. Because in my mind, I was like, how do you get away with it? As if he has to ask permission to have a healthy... Do you see? Like,
smiling, you're like, what's so funny?
Exactly, So I see, sis, just call me out. Just call my name if you want to. If you want to call me out next time.
We are snubbing each other on this episode. I love it. And this next bit is it's a bit of a personal bugbear for me, but it's my long-standing issue with nice. I don't rate niceness, okay? And I know that might sound a bit jarring for people, but I will explain. I think being nice, and we are taught, what is that thing? Girls are sugar and spice and all things nice. So for me, niceness is performative, and it's not rooted in like your values or alignment with your truest self. It's about the performance. It's about seeking approval from others. And I'm not trying to judge it, because we've all done it, right? Especially girls, because we are socialized, we are conditioned to be nice. That's not nice. And sorry, I'm getting into rant mode. My bad. Sorry.
You know me, I love your rants. So.
Sorry, but it's just this awful. I don't know what to call it, like a prison.
It's insidious. That's the thing.
And it's just, you have to be nice, and it carries through. If it stopped in childhood, it'd be one thing, but no, it carries through. It's why you have so many stats and stuff about, well, when women do this, they're seen as aggressive, but when men do the same thing, they're seen as assertive, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and that Martha Stewart documentary, that really came out like in that as well. Like,
I mean,
there were like thousands, if not millions of men doing exactly what she was doing, and that wasn't an issue.
She didn't even do anything. I think that's what.
That's the thing. As that she was just, it was
she didn't like her.
It was exactly. It was about her personality, not about her actions.
Not about her
that
actions.
Was it.
They couldn't prove that she actually did anything illegal, and I would say she didn't, right? But she still ended up going to prison because that one man was like, I don't like the cut of your jib. You're too strong. You're too assertive.
Like, how dare you?
Even in the documentary itself, there were like clips where it was showing her maybe talking in a way with somebody in the kitchen that wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, and because when Gordon Ramsay is effing and blinding,
remember Idiot Sandwich? Remember that? And everyone just found it funny. Everyone was kicking, But if Martha Stewart did that, oh my God,
it'll be a big problem. Yeah. So it's just like, why is it for one person it's a gimmick, for another person it's a reason to send her to prison? So anyway, I mean, honestly, people, if you haven't watched that, please do.
We're not saying so there's a difference between nice and like having basic human decency and manners or...
Yes. So niceness is about the performance. be decent. And actually, the thing that I really believe in, it's a core principle of mine, is kindness.
Kindness.
That's
Thank
what
you.
I live with.
Thank you.
Be kind.
Yes.
Kindness is about being honest. It's about having and giving respect. And moreover, it's about fairness. Kindness means that if you're in a work situation, for example, you've got someone on your team who's underperforming, a nice thing to do would be like, oh, it's okay, oh, don't worry, it's fine, we'll figure it out. A kind thing to do is say, hey, listen, this and this and this isn't working. We really need to get it together. This is where you need to be. I'm going to help you get here. And if they continue to underperform, nice is to start, not to their face telling them that there's a problem, but maybe, oh, don't worry, maybe asking someone else to try and pick up the workload. Why should they? But that would be the nice thing. The kind thing is to say, we've been working at this, it's still not working. Maybe we should think about other roles or performance plan. Kind doesn't always, sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's difficult, but kind leads to the best outcomes. Do you want a manager who's nice and I'm sure a lot of people, I have been in this situation where you have an underperformer or a difficult person on the team, and rather than deal with the issue at hand, they just keep shoveling things out of the way, putting it on other people. Everyone else has got to pick up that slack. We've all got to tolerate the rubbish. People get frustrated. Great people leave. That's a tale as old as time within a work setting. Whereas a kind leader will root out the problem and deal with it directly, with fairness, mind you. So I just think if you are struggling with that kind of how I'm going to be seen, don't think that you need to completely change who you are and become this bad bitch. That's not the brief. But think about, am I being honest? Am I being fair? Am I being respectful? Or actually, am I doing this for the look, for how I'm going to be perceived? And lean towards kindness over niceness, right? Nice is about other people's comfort, whereas kindness is actually about honesty. And kindness allows you, at times, when necessary, to just say no. So listen, there is a good deal of data about boundaries and the importance of them.
Nice, let's go.
So there is a book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Pretty good, right? I like a book that just tells you what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on a t-shirt, actually. Set boundaries.
I wonder if they've got merch, but it's by Nedra Glover Tawwab, and it's all about boundaries being a form of kindness, not just to other people, but to yourself. And here's a quote from the book that I think is quite nice. Nice. Boundaries are expectations and needs that help you feel safe and comfortable in your relationships. I think that's an important word there, safe. You know what you were saying before about the tomato analogy? The exposed tomato. It is exposed to the roughness, right? It's exposed to the elements. How can it grow? How can it flourish? You need protection sometimes. Yes. You need to give yourself that. I love that analogy so much because boundaries aren't blockage, it's protection. Then there's an article in the Harvard Business Review by Joe Sanok, a few years old, saying that employees with healthy boundaries are more productive, they have higher job satisfaction, and they reported lower stress.
You don't say.
Quelle surprise. And then here's an interesting one for my fearful friends, because fear is a big part of not boundaries. But in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, again in 2022, they had a study which found that people tend to overestimate how negatively other people will react when they say no. And in reality, most people are actually far more understanding than we fear.
True. That was my experience as well.
Right, we really make these big things, these dragons that we need to slay in our minds. But it turns out it's not. It's just a cute little puppy that's just happy and licking us.
I started imagining a cute little puppy, and I lost my train of thought.
So adorable. Oh, puppy. And actually, do you know what you were saying? Back to that litmus test thing. There is something very interesting about when you do establish a boundary. If someone is reacting extremely negatively to it, there's reason there to maybe rethink that relationship. You know, it can be quite enlightening.
That's the thing. And going back to root causes, sometimes we self-sabotage setting boundaries because we don't want to own up to the fact that some relationships in our lives will have to go if we start setting boundaries. See, my therapy tag is full right now. I'm going to go for a top-up soon, but just...
Yeah. I wish I had like sound effects. I think I'd have like a Michael Bay explosion noise at that point. Okay, so we're going to do our new regular segment, Living Proof.
Yes.
So we're going to bring to life what we're talking about. And I really love this person because we're going to talk about Simone Biles.
What a wonderful human being.
The GOAT, Simone Biles. Because if we're going to rethink boundaries, she really is the blueprint. So in 2021, she quite famously stepped back from Olympic events to prioritize her mental health. The world saw her do this. Some people praised her. Other people dragged her. I was going to say saying no names. Okay, well, fine, I won't say any names. Schmorgan. Some people dragged her. They said that she was weak, that she was a quitter. But Simone knew what she needed. She protected herself in that moment, and then she came back. Last year, Paris Olympics, which, my God, I was glued to my screen. She came back and she became the most decorated gymnast in history. More medals, more dominance, more joy. So that boundary from 2021, it didn't block her greatness. It protected it and allowed her to come back bigger and better and badder than ever before. And her haters are still wallowing in whichever hellscape.
They're still gnashing their teeth.
Gnashing their teeth. So it's just good to think about boundaries as they're not the enemy of excellence. They're a container for it. And boundaries aren't about saying no. It's also about saying yes, but saying yes to your time, your rest, your purpose, your capacity.
Yes.
So yeah, if you need to think about it, what would Simone Biles do? There you go. Something to think about.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So if there's one thing to take away from this, as we've been saying, it's that boundaries are not barriers. They're bridges. They're bridges to clarity, to care, and to the kind of life that actually fits you. I'm really into this thing of fitting. I want all aspects of my life to fit me. You know, like when you buy some off-the-rack clothing, it's nice. But when you go to a tailor and get that thing for your body.
Look, there's a way you even walk. That is different.
Switching your hips. You're like, okay, Naomi. Okay.
Hair that you don't have.
Exactly. Putting it behind your ear when your head is bald. It's just about being able to live into your life, like to be in it fully, and for it to feel like it is yours and nobody else's, because that's what you deserve.
And it can't be anyone else's. And that's the thing. Like, it's your life. It's at the end of the day, it's your life. Only you can live your life.
Yeah.
So stop living it for other people. Start with yourself first.
Yeah. And
let other people enjoy the positive effects of you loving yourself first.
Okay, so now we're going to shift into the undo. I just love undo.
I love the undo. I love
really
it. Let's go. Let's go.
Earlier on, I said something about, people talk a lot about boundaries, but they don't really talk about how to do it. I'm not really going to talk about how to do it either. Okay, I am a little bit.
Seek help.
Help. But I can't, we couldn't possibly within a sort of half an hour, 40-minute podcast get into the nooks and crannies of boundary setting and maintenance, but we are going to help you if you're ready to shift in boundaries or establish boundaries. We're going to help you get started on that wonderful, wonderful journey. So the of undo is unlearn. And we want you this week to unlearn that saying yes is the de facto right thing to do. Unlearn that being liked is more important than being well. Mm-hmm. And unlearn that boundaries are cold, rude, or selfish.
Yes.
They're not.
No.
So if you want to reflect on that and just go a little bit deeper with yourself here, I want you to sit down and think about this. When are you saying yes out of guilt or fear? What beliefs are shaping your discomfort with setting limits with people or with yourself? And then, who taught you that you had to be nice to be safe? You're not going to be able to fix everything, but what we want to start with is just some self-awareness.
Yeah.
You know, so notice when guilt, when that reflex is coming up. What is driving that? What's the lesson, the story? What are those, what's the history behind that? And is that still serving you? Now, you grown woman, grown man, grown non-binary person listening to this right now, is it still serving you or not? Spoiler alert, it's not.
It's not.
It's not. Okay? And now we're going to try and do something. Again, we are starting small, but what we're going to do newly this week is we're going to start with one intentional and respectful boundary.
And if you can't manage respectful, do intentional, disrespectful boundary. Start with that and then work your way up to respectful.
I want everyone to note that that was Yemisi that said that, not me.
Because respect is in the eye of the beholder. I found in my own situation. So there are some people that would take it as a disrespect regardless of what you do. So, and the mental energy requires sometimes to do things in a specific way. Sometimes you end up not doing it because you talk yourself out of it. So even if you have to be disrespectful, own the disrespect, and then you can say sorry later if you need it.
That's a fantastic point, because I know for sure there's going to be a lot of children of immigrants hearing this, and they are going to be like, my mum, my dad will slap me if I try and set a boundary, even though I'm 42. And so Yemi makes a fantastic point. Your intention is not to disrespect anyone, but they how they take it isn't your responsibility. If they take it as disrespect, that's on them. And that's so complex because that's their own stuff. That's a whole life, even before you existed. They have. That's not for you to take on as your thing to figure out and maneuver around. You know your intention here. And like I often will say that intention actually doesn't matter. Impact is what matters. But in this specific instance, you're not setting out to be disrespectful, but you are acknowledging that no matter how I say this thing, just the act of me establishing a boundary with this person, they will take as disrespect. And there's nothing you can do about it. But remember that thing we said, we need to unlearn that being liked is more important than being well.
See, you took the words out of my mouth.
It doesn't matter if they think you're disrespectful. You need to look after yourself, okay? Listen, it's not an easy thing. This is not easy, but by any stretch of the imagination, especially if you are a grown person and you have spent years not having boundaries, to establish it, it's going to be hard. And don't think that you can just do it in one go and that's that. This is going to take time to create, to build, to maintain, to reinforce, to reestablish. It requires consistency. It requires you to also forgive yourself if sometimes you do go back on it, right? Like it's not, nothing is overnight. But if we can start this week with just one intentional and intentionally respectful boundary, outcome pending. So examples of that, if it helps to make it feel a bit more real and starting softly, before you reply to a request, ask yourself first of all, do I actually want to do this? Just, sometimes it can be so automatic to be like, okay, yeah, sure, I can do that. Hold on a minute. I actually can't do that. Not because I don't even have time. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say no, You can set a time limit for work messages. Listen, I am done on Slack at 5:30 and I'm simply not going to, I'm just going to close the app, or I'm going to use the timer. They have those things on those phones. I'm going to set it off so I don't even see anything. And I'm going to stick to it. I'm not reading anything after 9:30. After 5:30 and nothing before 9:30. And you'll find that the world doesn't burn down.
No, it's still the right way you left it.
Right. And then just, find something that you feel comfortable doing this with, and just something that you would usually say yes to, just say no. Just try it. Try saying no. And see how you feel saying no. It's not always about how did that person react. Actually, the most important thing is, how do I feel? Chances are when you start saying no or pushing back on certain things, you're going to feel really uncomfortable. But you're going to soon see that, oh, it's okay. They didn't respond badly. And you start to now build self-trust, because you're trusting yourself to look after yourself, to look after your best interests, to stand up, to use your voice, to advocate for yourself. Boundary setting doesn't have to be these big dramatic moments. It's tiny decisions that you make over and over again that honor your capacity and your values.
Exactly.
If you want to go deeper, here are some books that we really rate around boundaries. I've already talked about the first one, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, by Nedra Glover Tawwab. It's a clear and really practical guide as to what boundaries actually are, how to set them, and how to stick to them without spiraling with guilt. So go and read that book, because it really will help you on your journey of boundary setting. Another one is Radical Candor. This one's really, really good at work. It's been a few years since I've read it. It's by a lady called Kim Scott. And she really talks about, in a work setting, how to be direct and kind.
Yeah.
So, because she has, over years and years in the corporate sector, just seen how much people don't want to deal with the hard stuff because they're trying to be nice. But actually, she's like, no, there are ways to have candor and be radical in that. So whether you're managing people or you're just managing yourself within some sometimes difficult team dynamics, this is definitely the book for you.
Yeah.
And then Brene Brown, I feel like she's always going to come up when we talk about things like boundaries and vulnerability and whatnot, but she has a book called The Gifts of Imperfection, which is all about letting go of that need to be liked all the time. So if you're trying to unlearn people pleasing, and get back to what really matters to you, this is a really helpful book for that. And like, I know there's conversations around Brene, and some people don't love how she does what she does, but I think there's still...
Oh my God, there's always something.
Right? But there's some and some of it is quite valid, but that's a whole different conversation. But there is some really, really valid stuff in quite a few of her books. So I still would heavily recommend The Gifts of Imperfection. So you can find the links for all of those are in the show notes, but you can find all those books and more on the library on the Workwell website. Again, link for that in the show notes. All right, I think it's time to wrap up.
Let's do it.
If this episode helped you rethink your boundaries, we hope it gives you permission to protect your peace. And if someone else in your world needs that same reminder, send it their way.
And if you've got a few seconds, a 5-star rating or a quick review really helps us reach more people.
We're also doing minisodes this season where we unpack real dilemmas from listeners. So if there's something you're wrestling with, boundaries, burnout, any awkward work stuff, send your email to dilemma@thisisworkwell.com, and don't worry, we'll make sure you stay anonymous.
Want to keep up with us online? You'll find all the links in the show notes.
Next time we're talking about productivity and why working more doesn't always mean working hard. See you then. Bye.